Hello, this is Anthony from strongmencoaching.com. And hey, your time is valuable, so let's get right into it. Today, I want to talk about the biggest destroyer of relationships. I just had a very long conversation with a friend, and it really reminded me of a lot of things that I have helped men with over the years. And it's this thing with relationships. So I want to share with you the biggest destroyers of relationships and how you can overcome any difficulties that you have. So let's get right into it. So one of the biggest destroyers of your relationship is, think about this for a moment. Think about this. One of the things to ask yourself, right, is, you know, who taught you about relationships? Who taught you about relationships and how to build a healthy one, right? So, who taught you? First off, you want to ask yourself, where did you even learn what is needed in order to have a healthy relationship? Think about that for a minute. I know in my own life, no one taught me anything. Of course, I saw my parents, they got divorced, they both remarried. One got a divorce, eventually the other got a divorce. And you go through life, right? At 18, you're off to the races. You think you know everything. You get into relationships and you just go from there. You might do things that, well, this is what I think I'm supposed to do in a relationship. I think this is what I'm supposed to say in a relationship, And so when you think about it, of who even taught you how to have a healthy relationship, if you can't really think of anybody, then the number one reason, or one of the biggest destroyer, is lack of skills, the lack of skills and knowledge, right? Because when it comes to relationships, it takes skills, it takes knowledge, it takes a lot of things. And let me just get this bigger here. Oops. Right. So who taught you about relationships and how to build, who taught you about relationships and how to build a healthy one, right? If no one ever taught you, then the biggest destroyer is your lack of skills and knowledge of what it actually takes to have a healthy relationship. That's the number one. The second one is a biggest destroyer, right? So if you're in a relationship, let me back up. If you're in a relationship and you lack knowledge and skills of how to have a true healthy relationship, what is that going to do? What is that going to cause? I'm sure you could think about it, but it's going to cause anxiety. It's going to cause anxiety and perhaps some self-doubt. So if you don't have the skills and knowledge and understanding of how to build a healthy relationship, how are you ever going to have a healthy, successful relationship? And when you're in a relationship and perhaps you have real feelings for somebody, but it's just not functioning, is it not functioning because you're not right for each other? Or is it because that neither one of you have the skills and knowledge in order to have a healthy relationship? The second one is where that's going to end up causing, right? It's going to end up causing anxiety. That's normal. And what ends up happening, if you look at any area of your life where you do not feel like you have the skills or knowledge, it's going to cause anxiety. And in relationships, perhaps doubt and even depression. But this anxiety and this self-doubt can be eliminated when you have the skills and knowledge in order to know what it's going to take to have a healthy relationship. In addition, when you have the skills and knowledge of what it takes to have a healthy relationship, is you're not going to stay in any relationship that is not healthy. That is not healthy. You're not going to continue to stay in a relationship that you know 100% that it's not healthy for you. And oops, yep, you are not. You're. Thank you. So you're not going to stay in a relationship that is not healthy. Oftentimes, people will stay in a relationship just to stay in the relationship, even though they know 100% this is not who I want to be with. This is, I care about the person, but I just don't want to break their heart, right? So that goes back to the lack of skills and knowledge of what it takes to have a healthy relationship. One of the other things that is a destroyer of relationships is low self-esteem, which is something that is not often talked about. If you don't feel good about yourself and you're in a relationship, more likely than not, you're looking to that other person to validate your worth. So low self-esteem, when you have low self-esteem and you're in a relationship, you're more than likely relying on your partner. You're relying on your partner for validation of value, right? If this person doesn't love me, I'm not lovable. If this person doesn't love me, there's something wrong with me. It's putting your validation in the hands of another person. And this is a clear indication of low self-esteem. In addition, low self-esteem, as I mentioned in the first one, is you're not going to stay in any relationship. When you have low self-esteem, you're going to stay in a relationship that is not healthy for you. You're not going to, if you have low self-esteem, you're going to stay in a relationship that's not healthy for you. Oftentimes, or longer than the relationship should even go. There may be doubt, there may be anxiety just of why the relationship isn't working. And once again, as I mentioned to you before, one of the biggest destroyers is a lack of skills and knowledge of what it actually takes to have a healthy relationship. And if you have never had any examples of two people communicating with each other, having respect for each other, empathy and understanding, if you've never developed these skills, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you lack these skills. And that's okay. That's where it begins, where you can begin to build these skills of having a healthy relationship. But where does it all begin? Where does it begin to have a healthy relationship? And it really begins on the opposite side, right? Where you develop the skills and knowledge, right? You develop the skills and knowledge to have a healthy relationship. Right? You develop the skills and knowledge and understanding to have a healthy relationship. But before this, I actually consider this to be the most important. Before any relationship, and in all honesty, I truly believe that this is the number one reason why people have failed relationships, is that they have we don't talk about this enough, low self-esteem. They have no value. They have no self-worth. So take somebody who doesn't believe in themselves, take somebody who doesn't have self-esteem, and they're in a relationship. It's going to be unhealthy from the beginning because that person of low self-esteem is looking for external validation, external factors to that lead the person to believe that they have value or worth. When you're with somebody and you put all your value and worth into what they say or do, that's not going to lead to a healthy relationship because, one, there's not going to be good communication. There's not going to be good, if it's a bad situation. Oftentimes, people who have low self-esteem are not going to get out of that relationship. There are people who, it's unfortunate where we don't talk about this enough, where it is low self-esteem. Oftentimes, people confuse it with, I want to be more confident. When it's not confidence they should be trying to build, it's their self-esteem that they should be building. So the number one thing that you need to do to build a healthy relationship is to build your self-esteem. Build a healthy relationship entails high self-esteem, or to have a healthy relationship, you've got to have high self-esteem. You've got to have self-esteem to where the other person, because you want the other person to have self-esteem as well. You don't want them relying on you to validate them, because that's not your job. That's not your job to lead or to make that person feel good. Now, granted, in a relationship, you want to do things that are loving, caring, and those things are going to lead someone to feel loved. But what happens is people put their validation in the hands of another person. Here's another thing. They put their, this is the biggest one. When they have low self-esteem, they put their happiness in the hands of their partner. And this is one of the worst things that you can do, because no one is responsible for your happiness. No one is responsible for your happiness. You and you alone are responsible for your happiness. But how often do we put our happiness in the hands of another person? Now, it doesn't mean that people don't do things that, that bring happiness and joy in our life. Now, that's something that they do. Great. You're appreciative. Thank you. And it's something to be happy and joyful about. But I'm talking about the source of your happiness comes only from you. And that's true happiness. And that comes from having high self-esteem. When someone has high self-esteem, they don't need anyone to validate them. They don't need any external factor. They don't need likes. They don't need thumbs up. They don't need anything. Doesn't mean as people, we don't need a hug, congratulations, a pat on the back, recognition for the things that we contribute at work. That's normal. I'm talking about it from an unhealthy mindset, which it's unhealthy when when the person has low self-esteem, because they're wanting those things. And when they're not receiving them, that's when they can't be 100%. They can't be good in the relationship, because if you're putting your joy and happiness in the hands of somebody else, then they're taking on that responsibility, or you're giving them that responsibility when it's not their responsibility. So that other person is perhaps doing a whole lot more because they may, quote unquote, love you, but that's just because that other person as well has low self-esteem, where they're not able to, they're in, low self-esteem attracts low self-esteem. And when that person is just not able to consistently do things that the other person wants, eventually they're going to get tired of it. They're going to get tired of it. It cannot continue. I'm talking about having a healthy long-term relationship. But if somebody who is has a healthy self-esteem, a healthy self-image, they don't need anything. They don't need the likes. They don't need the thumbs up. They don't need the tattoos anywhere. They don't need the tattoos on their hands. They don't need to attract attention. They have love for themselves. So to build a healthy relationship, you gotta improve your self-esteem, right? So you gotta improve your self-esteem. Low self-esteem, people put their happiness in the hands of another person when no one is responsible for your happiness. You and let me try this again. And you alone are responsible for your happiness. You and you alone are responsible for your happiness. A clear sign of somebody who has low self-esteem is where they say, I'm happy when you do XYZ. I'm happy when you do XYZ. And that's not. You've got to be happy in of yourself. That's the beginning. You've got to increase your self-esteem to feel good about yourself and belief in yourself in order to have a healthy, long-term relationship. Now, the skills, right? The skills that are needed, right? One of the most important, oftentimes people will say communication. And yes, communication is important. Learning to communicate how you're feeling, you're thinking, what you're thinking, communicating, feeling confident. When somebody has self-esteem, they're able to communicate with their partner. There's nothing that they would feel uncomfortable with. Maybe if it's like the first time, but they still have that belief in themselves that no matter what reaction that person has, I'm still going to be okay. I hope it goes okay. I'll, learn from it, but you got to learn to communicate. And when you have your self-esteem, you can build upon these communication skills, right? Skills and knowledge. What else can help in building or having a healthy relationship, right? Skills of communication, empathy, emotional, right? Emotional intelligence, which is really, I think in the last, I don't know how long it's been, but I've known about emotional intelligence for some time. But it's true. Emotional intelligence is being able to recognize how what you are doing and how it's impacting others in a way that allows you to understand how you're communicating. And if you are unable to empathize with other people, if you're unable to control, right? Unable to control your emotions. First off, I would say unable to control your emotions is a sign of low self-esteem. But with emotional intelligence, you're able to understand your emotions and others, and being able to understand that it's okay to have these different emotions, and there's ways to communicate with people, and it's okay to take a step back and try and understand other people's viewpoints, even though they might differ from your own, and to not see them as the enemy, but just as somebody else who sees the world one way and you another. Because the truth is, every single one of us, every single individual sees the world in a completely different way. And so it's being able to understand that and accept it. It doesn't mean that we have to all believe the same thing, but we can still be friends. We can still be family. So these skills and knowledge to have a healthy relationship, communication skills. What I mean also, in addition to communication skill, is conflict resolution. With conflict resolution is, okay, we're in this situation. We both aren't doing well. How can we resolve it? How can we communicate with each other where we both feel heard and we both can come to a resolution where you're not attacking each other, you're attacking the problem. In a healthy relationship, if there is a situation, you as a partner, as a union, that you're the team, and you're the team, and the way you communicate within your team is that, hey team, we have an issue. Here's the issue, and it's not attacking the problem. It's not attacking the person. It's attacking the problem. And this takes emotional maturity. This takes maturity. It takes a willingness to listen and understand. It takes a willingness to accept that the way you're seeing something is wrong. And that in of itself is maturity. So one of the skills is communication skills, conflict resolution, meaning being able to communicate with each other, communicate your feelings, your emotions. And when I mean feelings, it's a concern is a feeling. Hey, I'm concerned about this. Oftentimes when we hear, especially for men, to share your feelings, you have feelings, you have emotions every day. And so it's sharing, hey, how are you feeling? Because if you come home every day and you're mad and you're upset, that's a feeling. And your partner, significant other, would like to know, hey, what's bothering you? And that's where it's people, or I think where men are encouraged to share their feelings, like, hey, what's going on? And what happens is when somebody's unwilling to share what's going on, it's a sign of what? Low self-esteem. Why? Because they're not feeling confident of themselves. So they're feeling they have a low sense of self-worth, so that they feel more that they'll be judged based off of feeling a certain way. So when they feel like they're going to be judged, because the foundational of that is lack of self-esteem. Oftentimes we confuse it with a lack of confidence. I should be confident enough to share this with my partner. But the truth is that it's more of a lack of self-esteem, where I don't feel confident of myself that what I'm going to say, I may feel attacked. I may feel vulnerable. We talk so much about confidence when it's really about low self-esteem, low self-worth. So when it comes to communication, being able to express, how are you feeling? And you should be in a relationship where someone's not going to judge you. They love you for who you are. They want to be with you for who you are. But when two people who have low self-esteem, especially one person in the relationship, it's going to cause conflict, because the other person wants to know, hey, what's going on in your head? And when you're not sharing what's going on in your head, you know how we can get to where now we're starting to think about things that are more likely than not true. And we end up, the other person ends up confused, hurt, their thoughts start running and can cause anxiety and depression. And so do you see how when low self-esteem impacts a relationship? We talk too much about confidence when it's more about building your self-esteem, your self-worth. So communication, conflict resolution, not attacking the person, but attacking the problem. Having empathy, understanding that I may not, when someone brings up something, you may not have ever gone through it before, but you can understand, hey, I can understand where you're feeling this way. I hear you. Empathy, emotional intelligence. All are skills and things in order to build a healthy relationship. And when you don't have these skills, these will destroy a relationship at some point. Because why? Because every relationship, has their ups and downs. Every relationship has their ups and downs. Let me rewrite that. Every, right? Every relationship has their ups and downs. Now, what do I mean by that? It doesn't mean that the relationship itself, it means the people in the relationship are going to go through ups and downs, which can cause the relationship to go up and down. And don't get me wrong, there are times where, hey, what's going on? We're not communicating. We're at each other's throats. We're attacking each other. Not the problem. I'm sharing this with you, but you just seem that, I'm just not getting anything back from you, right? You're not able to control your emotions, right? So is it there? It's every relationship has its ups and downs. Okay, so and it's true, right? So if you have these skills, in order to build a healthy relationship, you got to have self-esteem. I've worked with men for many years, and oftentimes they want to focus on building confidence when their issues will be resolved if they had more value, they had more self-esteem, self-worth. They see themselves for who they are, which are, a great person. They just lack what? They lack the skills and knowledge to have a healthy relationship. I have worked with some men where, you know, unfortunately, men suffer from physical abuse as well. A man who has self esteem, self worth will never tolerate a relationship where there's physical abuse. And the same goes for the woman. Self esteem, when you have value, you know your boundaries. It's like there's no X, whatever that might be, when you have self esteem. You're unwilling to be spoken to in a certain way. You're unwilling to be disrespected. You're unwilling to be for someone to be unkind to you. When you're unwilling to accept those things, that's a clear indication of self-esteem, because you have self-love, self-esteem, self-worth, that if you're in a relationship and somebody uses a certain, uses words to attack you, you won't tolerate that. You won't tolerate that. Now, don't get me wrong. There is that tolerant. There are times where people are like, I'm gonna bring this up and let you know, hey, you could set the boundary. Be like, I will not tolerate that. We will have this level of respect and kindness to each other, and there will not be there will be no disrespect, no unkind words said to each other, none of that. And to each their own. But somebody who has high self-esteem will not tolerate that. They will be with somebody who will be kind, who will be respectful, and they wouldn't want to treat their partner in any other way. So with somebody to disagree with that, that's another indication of low self-esteem, where they're like, well, you love me, you should deal with this. No, that isn't love, right? People may use the term, well, if you love me, you would do X. Clear sign of low self-esteem. That person should never have to say, I need you to do something so that I feel good about myself, or I need you to do something to prove your love to me. No, absolutely not. So when people look at why they're struggling in their relationships, it's a lack of skill and a lack of self-esteem. And we are never taught these things at a younger age. Rarely. Just like we're not taught financial intelligence. We're not taught financial information. Two things that are most important in our life are our relationships and our finances. And rarely will somebody who gets to 18 years old before they are off living their life as an adult rarely gets this information, rarely is taught this information, and are able to go out in life and build good relationships and understand when a relationship has run its course or it's not the right one of what they need and want. And they go off and have, good people in their life, good experiences, and so forth and so on. And even with people who have self-esteem, they also understand that just because you love somebody doesn't mean you need to be in a relationship with them. Having self-esteem can also love somebody and say, I love you and I care about you, but I'm not, this isn't the relationship that I want to be in. So I want to share this with you. And there is a lot of misinformation, not misinformation. I don't want to use that word because it's not misinformation. I correct myself. It's a lack of education that oftentimes people, before they become adults, do not receive this sort of education, this knowledge, these skills. So by the time men reach out to me, they have been struggling for a very long time, struggling in their marriages, struggling in what they call confidence, struggling in their businesses, struggling with friendships, these sorts of things. And so I help men in building these skills, not just in relationships, but building skills, building an understanding of their specific situation in their relationship and how they can have the relationship that they yearn for and that they want. I'm Anthony Treyas from strongmencoaching.com, and reach out to me if you have any questions and would like more information about the coaching that I offer. And as always, once again, stay strong.